Chiefs starters took a hit on Wednesday. What does that mean for this upcoming preseason game number 2 today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. They're helping everyone out, and I mean everyone gets a hookup right now all summer long, either a boost or bonus every single day for every single customer. That's right, even you. Get in there and check it out at FanDuel.com and get started. This is going to be a fun one. Unfortunately, we're going to have to work through some difficult news, but we are starting to see the formation of the Chiefs roster. We're going to go through a number of aspects of it today with Chris Clark, the guy who runs KC Chiefs Corner, as well as me. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Roy Analytics and Performance Consulting. Right? I use the left hand. That's fun. Check out NFL 33 and RGR Football as well to get all of my work. And if you really want the Athletic Matrix, it is still available and always there at rogatepc.com. A lot to cover today. A couple of new updates injury-wise. They're going to shed some light. There are long shots to make this roster. Who's got better chances right now or needs to show out in the second preseason game to get there? And what's the setup of LRZ? That's coming up later in the show. The wide receiver room is a jumble right now. How's it trickling out and what does it look like? That's coming up next. But we start with probably the biggest news of the day is that starting right tackle Jawaan Taylor did come up with a shoulder injury. I believe it's a right hand. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. Today in practice, it's been reported on a number of outlets that did happen. He did leave the field in the cart, but Adam Schefter came back and followed that up, a report that they are, quote unquote, not terribly concerned about it, end quote. I'm glad the team can say that, or at least there's sources that will say that. I'm concerned about it because losing your top right tackle is always a concern. We're always worried about that here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Make sure that you like and sub and hit the bell right here on YouTube and get out to the podcast sites on Spotify and Apple Music, and you can get us all the time there for free if you get subscribed. And also check out the Insider text line. That's where all the locos hang out at 816-357-8781. And get subscribed to the other outlets. Sorry, I kind of jumped the gun there and forgot. I'm a little concerned about Jawaan Taylor, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah, a little bit. And just so you know, if you would have been on the locos text line, you would have known about Jawaan Taylor a couple of hours ago. Because I did get that sent out in a message. Something we try to do on a regular basis when news breaks. We get messages out to our locos because we appreciate you. You look at this Jawaan Taylor thing, and it is a problem. I do think that it's encouraging to hear that Adam Schefter is coming out and saying that it is not something that they're overly concerned about. That to me means a great situation, actually, in some ways. Though I will say I'm a little nervous because you're going into this next preseason game. If Jawaan Taylor can't go, how comfortable are you going to be having Lucas Niang being the right tackle that's going to be playing with Patrick Mahomes for however long Mahomes plays? That makes me nervous. And
better late than never, although I will say I thought Niang had a decent first game out. In that prospect alone, do you think that shortens the whole group's night or at least Patrick's?
I would think that you would have to make it shorter. But here's the other side, and I've talked to a couple people with that know about the Lions, and they're saying that the Lions probably aren't going to play their starters. So at that point, it becomes a situation of, okay, well, you can get your team, you can get a lot of your reps in with guys that aren't going to be their starters for Detroit, and if that's the case, then maybe you play them a little bit longer because you're not going up against starters anyway, and you would hope that they could acquit themselves. The big thing is if you think that Niang's going to struggle, throw a tight end over there and help Chip the entire time. It doesn't really matter. You're going to have some of those snaps anyway.
Yeah,
in the regular season
for certain. And it's a game plan you can throw away if you need to this week. You want to run some basic plays. You don't have to get too fancy with it. So if you have to go from a lot of 11 personnel packages to leaving that tight end in, okay, they'll live. I think it'll be fine.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see what they do when you start looking at the starters, how this is going to play out. We know Suamataia is going to be ready to go for this game. And I think he's probably going to be excited for this game because think about who he's going to be playing against. It's not going to be against his Cousins specifically, but his cousin's going to be there. So, he's going to have a chance for the first time to actually ever be on the same, well, maybe not the first time, but he'll be on the same field with his cousin. And I don't think Sewell will be playing from what it sounds like from what I've heard, but so we'll see. But you look at how this is going to shape out for the offensive line. The other question when we start talking about the starters is Joe Thuney going to play? He started to do some of the offensive drills and started to get in, I think, some of the team reps too. So he could be getting to a point where he's, inching closer to playing. And if they're going to give him any reps, it needs to be in this game because they can't play in week 3. I don't think they're going to play any starters week 3. I don't know. There might be 30 guys that are out week 3.
You're absolutely right. I personally am of the feeling that Joe Thuney doesn't need reps. I don't care. I wouldn't play him at all this preseason. Would you?
Yes.
Okay.
And the main reason is because of who he's next to. He has no experience with Kingsley, and they need to get chemistry, and it is going to be something that Baltimore is going to be throwing stuff at them the first week of the season, trying to take advantage of anything there. So to me, yes, I would play him. Obviously it all comes down to what the staff feels. If they feel he's healthy, then you have nothing left to lose. You play him, and injuries happen. It's part of football. There's nothing we can really do about it. And the Chiefs have always played this way in the preseason. So I think you risk it. And if they don't think there's a chance of re-injury, which is really what it comes down to specifically for Thuney, then I think you play him and you try to get him some reps with Suamataia, because they're going to have to work on twists and all of that stuff and be ready for week 1, because Baltimore's going to try to take advantage of the rookie. I guarantee it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm just a little more risk averse. That's all right. We'll see what Andy decides, and we should get an announcement here. Getting here close to the end of the week, so make sure you're with us. We are here 5 days a week for you. Plus, make sure you get subscribed so you get all of that information. But there's even more of a logjam, even more questions at the wide receiver spot. I personally think the jump ball might be back on the table for one reason alone. His name's Justin Ross. That's coming up next. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. With your schedule right now, the kids' activities, back to school, everything going on, the big work projects, and everything else in your life, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when you know what makes you happy and that you want to prioritize, it's hard to make it happen sometimes. When you feel like you don't have any time for yourself, it's time to make that happen. Therapy can help you with that. If you are thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's certainly geared toward everything that you're looking for, entirely online, suited to your schedule, and can be flexible to match what you need. You just fill out a questionnaire, you get matched with an actual therapist. And if not, if you don't gel or you want to switch therapists at any time, you can do that free of charge. Never skip another therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You're going to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Make sure if you want to get in the action, you're going to dig this, because we have 24/7 coverage of the NFL. Thanks for making us your first listen. Now check out the rest of it there. And if you need your fantasy production right now, go check out the Fantasy Draft Show with Vinny Iyer. He does a heck of a job getting you ready. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every single day is where I'm at right now, with a different twist on the wide receiver room. The injury to Hollywood Brown, it looks like a quick announcement yesterday was it looks more like the 6-week time frame, which to me puts it at about week 2. So I am personally expecting right now that we probably see Hollywood go to IR on cutdown day, meaning he will miss weeks 1 through 3, but then he should be available to return. Gives him an extra week of either rest or elongated window, right?
I don't think they're going to put him on IR, and the reason I don't think they're going to put him on IR is because he has to miss 4 games.
I thought it was only 3.
Okay. Nope, it's 4. So at that point, I don't think you have a 3-day. So this part I know for sure. It's 4 games. You have to miss 4 games if you get put on IR. But there is, I believe, at least the way it's been, is there's a 3-week window in which to activate somebody after they come back from practice. But you actually have to miss 4 games. So He's not eligible to come back until week 5 at that point, which is why I don't think that they will put him on IR. I think that they're going to try to keep him on the roster. If they do put him on IR, that means it's a worse injury than we thought it was in my mind. So I would still think that he's back week 3. We'll see. I would agree. I don't think it's going to be something where he's going to be able to go against Baltimore. But the interesting thing to me, and this is what it really comes down to, is with him injured, does it change the roster math? And I know we're talking about wide receivers and the reactions, but that's what this all comes down to is the roster math. So we already know they're going to keep two QBs. How many running backs are they going to keep? If they keep 4, you have less spots available. If you keep 4 tight ends, you have less spots available. And we've been talking about like 10 offensive linemen. Maybe they only keep 9. Maybe it's even only 8. But now with Jawaan Taylor banged up and Wande Morris still banged up and Joe Thuney coming back from an injury, 8 seems awfully short. So
yeah,
to me, I think that's what it's going to come down to. And there's a possibility that you're looking at a situation as well with the wide receiver stuff where they're going to have to keep 7, even if they didn't plan on it, because they have injuries that they got to deal with.
That's fair. And that one game difference does change the math for me as well. I would agree. You leave him on the roster and you just write it out where he's not available for the first couple of weeks. But I would say you have to keep, I think you have to keep 9 linemen. I don't think you can get around that, especially with Jawaan and understanding that one is not 100% either, right? So you have 2 guys. You effectively only have 7.
Right, but could you could you keep 3 tight ends for the first 4 weeks with the thought process that you could probably get Irv Smith Jr. to the practice squad, which I think you could do. I think he could be a practice squad guy, and then maybe in a situation where Hollywood comes back, you let go of a wide receiver or some other position. Who knows what injuries are going to be by that point, and you bring back Smith Jr. because you can always activate Smith Jr. to the active roster for the first couple of weeks as well, and still have 4 tight ends technically on the roster. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. The other thing that really plays into this wide receiver conundrum and the question is, you and I have both been going on the thought process that Tony has guaranteed money of $2.5 million and that they weren't going to be letting that. They weren't going to be letting him go because of that. Sounds like that might not be the case with the way that they're talking about him publicly at this point.
You're absolutely right. And I think it was Matt Nagy that put it the best. Like, we got to get him out on the field and see what he can actually do for us. See if he can still make plays, because right now there's no evidence of that. And unfortunately for him, I think it's getting thinner and thinner, his opportunity to stay on the roster. Now, let me riddle you this. If they cut him, I'm not sure they have to worry about him going anywhere. I think there's enough negativity around the league about his attitude that you might be able to put him right back onto the practice squad and be done with it.
I would say it's potential. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed. I mean, the one thing that he has going for him is that he would basically not have to have a big contract. He would just basically be able to sign for vet min, which is like $1.2 million, I think, in double dip, because his contract with the Chiefs is already guaranteed for 2.5. So maybe they could bring him back on the practice squad. But here's my argument on that. If you're really willing to cut him with everything you've been through, do you really want him back on the practice squad? Do you really want him to take one of those positions that, I mean, because you have a guy in Montreal, Washington, who's shown out at times at camp and can return, which is one of the big things for Tony, is that they look at him as a returner. But Montreal, Washington can fit that. Now, he doesn't have Tony's skill set, and I get that, but nobody else has that skill set either. So you know what you have in Washington. I think that would be, I mean, that's just one guy. I mean, and this is a question, does McCole Hardman make the roster? That's another guy you could have on the practice squad potentially. I mean, he doesn't have any guaranteed money on his contract.
A lock. Yeah, I think McColl's a lock just for the trust and the one-to-one replaceability of Hollywood in terms of the speed aspect, to still have 2 guys that can stretch the field. I don't think that's much of a question. I think the guy that reaps the benefit of Tony's decision is Justin Ross. I think he's He pulled ahead of Remigio after last week. I won't say that's a done deal, but I think it's a combination as well, is that not only did he perform well, and I know everybody wants to look at the contested catch that he made. That didn't impress me that much. That's what he does. It's the fact that he was able to run a pretty nice little whip route and get down the line and be available to the quarterback. That's something we haven't seen him do before. And so that shows me that he's finally starting to grow. It's been a tough couple of years for him where we haven't seen much development. And now if he's able to run a bigger route tree and do the little things that a big slot in particular has to do, and a guy that has to take over X reps has to do, I think that bodes well for his chances to get onto the roster, and then maybe we'll actually see contested catches go into the game plan a little bit more. I think that has to be earned, but I think he's probably the only one that can push that agenda. You know what I mean?
Well, he's definitely the only one that's going to push that agenda. I mean, he's got the body, he's got the skill set and the style of play to be able to do that. The question with him is can he step in and play the wide receiver position? Because the bigger problem, and I will continue to say this, the bigger problem with Justin Ross, can he make the roster? Yeah, it's possible. But his big problem is he's going to be behind the big three in Brown, Worthy, and Rice, regardless. We know that. We don't know whether or not he'll be behind Justin Watson. But when I say he's behind those other three, it's because we know where their skill level is, and we know that they have big plans for all three of those guys. The problem is can he step in and replace any of those three? That's the bigger problem, because you're changing. Yeah. If you put him in, he has a different skill set, and maybe you can add something to the playbook, but are you going to have to take something out of the playbook? That could be one of the problems. That's what the big question is.
And I think it's not a one-for-one replacement. Right now, as of tonight, he's a red zone threat. Yep. He's got upside, and he's shown me more, and I've come around on him because he's made progress. A lot of folks think that I've been against him making the roster. That's only because I know he didn't have the skill set the Chiefs have been looking for. Now he's starting to improve that. So I think he's got a chance. Second game, I want to see more from him.
And you're not the only one. I still say I don't think he makes the roster as of right now, but I've said multiple times on X, I've said multiple times, and maybe I haven't said this as much as I need to on here. I would love to be proven wrong. I'd love for him to prove me wrong. But if he earns it and he makes the roster and he's able to produce, great. I'm looking based on what I've seen, and I'm looking at based on how they used him last year. 130 snaps in 10 games tells me that he wasn't a very big part of the game plan last year. And for a guy that's going to be somebody that doesn't really contribute much on special teams, because you're not going to really have as many gunner situations as you've had in the past couple of years. I mean, I guess you could on punt, but they've already got guys that are going to step in there. So it's just different than it has been in the past. And he has to earn reps as a wide receiver. He's one of the most talented wide receivers they have. That's absolutely the case. Can he grow and get into the role is the question.
Yeah, that's going to be the challenge. And you got to be available to do that. Luckily, he's been there. One guy who hasn't been today is Louis Rezamet, who had to miss practice with some back spasms. There's a conspiracy theory that I happen to buy into. It's about the long shots and how you take care of the future. What's LRZ's future coming up next? You love sports just like I do, and you love them so much you never want them to stop. But the playoffs have come and go. It's baseball season, and now it's training camp. There's always something to get into the action, and wherever you want to go, you can do it with one app on FanDuel and place any bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is giving away to all customers either a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. You can even take a look at the Chiefs right now. They are plus 600 for the next Super Bowl, the three-peat Super Bowl. You can go to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer right now. There's still time left in this summer. FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook betting partner of Major League Baseball and the NFL. Make sure you guys like and sub to this channel, as well as KC Chiefs Corner, where you might see a topic on this. NFL 33 is where I'm laying down the rest of the league, so you guys get some information on it. Get subscribed to us over there, and then check out RGR Football. What has you infuriated that you're shaking your head at me?
I'm not shaking my head at you. Big news just broke. Atlanta just traded for Matt Judon, so he is no longer in New England.
Okay, yeah.
Doesn't affect Kansas
that'll
City
help some
really,
guys
but
out.
something to watch.
Yeah.
It's crazy
I
to
thought you were
see
going to tell
somebody
me
traded
that they cut Juju.
Huh?
I thought you were going to tell me they cut Juju.
They cut Juju a while ago.
Oh, did they? Is he out? Okay.
He's been gone
surprised
for
my
over a
door
week.
isn't getting. Okay. I'm surprised my door isn't being beaten down for people that want to add Juju back. I don't think he has much to offer. That's the reason that I mention it. A guy that does have a lot to offer is Louis Rees-Zammit. He came into practice today, just as they're getting ready to wrap up training camp in St. Joe with a back issue. Didn't practice today. I'm not saying that he's part of a conspiracy, but I like the concept because what I've seen to this point, I would find a way to stash him. And if that means he goes on IR with a back injury, I am perfectly fine with that because I don't think he's going to get enough opportunity to progress through the season. And given that he was, I thought, played a nice all-around game in preseason week number 1. If he gets on the field in number 2 and he continues that, all the better. But I didn't see enough yet to make me feel like he can contribute to the regular season for this roster. Am I crazy?
I don't know that I would say you're crazy. I would say that we didn't get to see him return, and I think that's the whole reason that they wanted him. So we'll see if he gets a chance in week 2. He may not even play based on this injury. It's kind of funny, and the reason I was shaking my head before we went to commercial and laughing was because you said conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory because this is something Kansas City's done multiple times over the years. And we were talking about one of the guys that they did it with in Justin Ross 2 years ago. So, and they did it with Remigio last year. I think both of those guys could have come back and played during their rookie season, but neither of them did because they were on IR. So if he mysteriously ends up on IR, that's a little different, but I don't think it's going to be, I mean, it would take more than I think what his back injury was today, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm curious. I think that he could make this roster if he could show that he has the skill set to be able to be a great returner, but that's going to make difficult decisions at the running back position and all over the roster for other positions as well. So he'd have to be a superstar as the returner.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough role to get just that one aspect. So that brings me to where we are right now with he's a long shot to make the roster in my opinion, but the back injury is a complication that could sort itself out in that way. Who else are long shots to make the roster right now that you have a feeling about one way or the other? Are they out or do they have something that they can do to up their value in this second preseason game?
I think, man, it's tough. You start looking at the roster and trying to figure out where they're going to be. Based on week 1 and based on what we've seen in practice, I think Carson Steele is probably on the roster as of right now. And I would think that that's probably going to continue to be the case. But we'll see how things shake out. The one that's going to be really interesting to me is Curtis Jacobs and Cam Jones. Cam Jones being listed as a third string linebacker and Curtis Jacobs being listed as a second string linebacker. And I grant you that, maybe it's just not his natural position, I guess, but I would have thought Cam Jones was going to be on this roster. And it looks like Jack Cochran will be on the roster based on what we saw. So who's that next guy? It's going to be somebody.
I have no doubt. I think it's Cam Jones. Curtis Jacobs didn't hardly play in preseason week number 1 unless he gets like over a 50% snap share of this second preseason game. I think that's just a positional listing. I think you keep the 5 best, and that includes both Cochran and Cam Jones, in my opinion. But I'll be interested to see how they break that down and what the snap share is at the position group in this second game against the Lions.
Well, and Jacobs went out with an injury during that game, came back in and played after he went down with an injury. So we'll see. Cole Christensen's also one of those guys that's probably, in that same realm as well. I think it's between those 3, Cam Jones, Curtis Jacobs, and Cole Christensen. I don't think that they keep 6 linebackers at this point. The numbers just get too hard. It's just what it comes down to.
For me, it's 5, 5, 5, maybe 6 corners. I on the defensive side, the only position group I can see with 6 is corner, because they're so deep there. One of the guys that is a long shot right now, but I think is gaining ground, is Chris Rowland-Wallace, the USC product, who can play nickel, who can play safety, did both last week. I think right now, if there's any concern about Chamari Connor being a full-time nickel, then they'll move Trent McDuffie back into the nickel. They have plenty of outside guys, and I think they would keep Chris Rowland-Wallace as a possibility as another safety / nickel in case they needed to move that on. I do like his skill set. He's been quiet in camp, so let's see what he can do in week number 2.
Well, and that would probably push what? Kelvin Joseph off the roster?
Or Deion Bush. I'm not sure which. I think you can probably get Deion back to the practice squad, where if you need him, he's a guy can step in and make plays for you. I'm not 100% there.
Well, and that's kind of why I'm sitting here. I don't know that they keep 4 safeties. With Chamari Connor playing the way he is, and if you're going to keep a guy like Christian Rowland-Wallace who can play both corner and safety, maybe you keep 7 corners and you keep 3 safeties, and you have 2 guys that can help play multiple different roles, and you get Bush back to the practice squad. I mean, that's one of the things to watch. So be really curious about that, how that shakes out. And just to a quick update on the LRZ thing, because we talked about IR. One thing to note is there was a big IR change, and I think I mentioned this a couple days ago, but there was a big IR change this year to where if you put somebody on IR before cut down day, they're automatically on IR. Their season's done. On cut down day, you get 2. You could put 2 players on IR, and they could come back in 4 weeks. You don't have to hold them over until the next day after original roster cuts, like you've had to do in years past. That could be really big. Maybe I'm hoping it's not a big deal for the Chiefs, but it could be a really big deal because it could save some players for the Chiefs.
Yeah, for sure. And having that expanded ability is really important to get to the point where you can actually contribute and you don't have to be carried. I think that's going to be something that remains to be seen. A lot remains to be seen, and we're going to have to see what game 2 brings.
Yeah, and you still have a bunch of questions when you start talking about the defensive linemen. You start looking at the defensive tackles, who's going to play in that rotation, who's going to make the team in that rotation. Your guy Lovett or my guy Farrell. I guess my guy Farrell. I'll call it that for now, I suppose. Yeah, we'll see if they're going to make it. The defensive end position is still a question up in the air a little bit as well. So it's lots of different questions on this roster, and guys that are fighting for spots. This won't be as big of a game for the long shots that we're talking about right now. They will get some playing time, but I really do think that when you're talking long shots, week 3 is going to be where they're going to make the roster. They may have a good idea as to what they're going with after week 2, but going into week 3 when those guys are going to get to play a full game, basically, they can make a break of the roster for several of them, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It starts with game 2. Who's going to make some noise there? We'll do that coming up tomorrow, so don't miss it. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell here on YouTube and get subscribed. We appreciate you hanging with us. Make sure you check out KC Chiefs Corner, NFL 33, RGR Football, where we do all of our work and bring it all together here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can check out another show coming up right now. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you